Hello everyone. Before the Ukraine war broke out on February 4, 2022, Chinese President Xi Jinping welcomed President Putin at the opening ceremony of the Beijing Olympics. After bilateral talks, the two sides issued a joint statement that Sino-Russian relations are greater than a traditional alliance and that cooperation between the two sides has no limits. However, after the Ukraine war broke out, apart from condemning the West, China has not taken any concrete actions to help Russia in the war, such as providing economic aid or sending weapons like Iran has done. Why is this the case? Let's find out. First, before answering this question, we need to answer another one. What does China stand to gain by helping Russia? Firstly, it would strengthen the strategic partnership between the two sides. Helping Russia in the war means China is on the same side as Russia in confronting the West. This would bring their trust and cooperation to a new high. The two sides would certainly double their collaboration in trade, technology sharing, military cooperation and experience in dealing with the West. In addition, China could also request support from Russia in case a war with the US breaks out over the Taiwan issue. Secondly, helping Russia could be seen as a stepping stone in building new strategic alliances between China and other partners in the region. I'm ready to help you, Mr. Putin. If we become allies, it builds trust for other countries wanting to stand on the same front as China. Today they have become China's #1 strategic competitor with the US. Having more allies to deal with future conflicts can be considered. Thirdly, China is the world's second largest oil consumer. Helping Russia in the Ukraine war could help them receive long-term preferential pricing, ensuring stable supply. In fact, without helping, they have already benefited tremendously. Since the West turned its back on Russian oil, China has become the largest importer, with discounts of 10–15%, sometimes up to 40%. Finally, if Russia dies, China will be isolated and sooner or later, they will also confront the US. Therefore, helping is necessary with such strategic calculations. So with such benefits, why don't they help? The simple answer is they cannot measure whether the benefits of helping Russia outweigh the risks they would have to bear. The more complex answer is as follows. China has had a consistent foreign policy for decades not to intervene in other countries' internal affairs. They believe regional issues should be resolved through negotiations. In reality, they often do the opposite. Another lip service reason is that China is focused on economic development and becoming a comprehensive power. They don't want to lose sight of their long-term vision by getting involved in international conflicts and losing the trust of partner countries. This is completely true. However, it is only used as nice-sounding rhetoric. The real reasons behind it, according to experts, are very different. Before the Ukraine war, President Putin had hoped NATO would be deeply divided if it got involved in a war with Russia. The reason is most countries in the bloc depend on Russia's oil and gas. By sanctioning Russia, he hoped it would not lead to unity. This has proven untrue so far. His second hope was that if the war dragged on, causing economic losses, the opposition and citizens in NATO countries would rise up, causing internal discord and cracks within member states. This is quite accurate as countries like France, Germany and the UK have seen large-scale protests led by the opposition demanding an end to arms supplies to Ukraine. This is a good sign for Putin. However, assuming China provided military support to Russia, it could have the opposite effect. The threat from the two powers combined would help EU and NATO citizens become more united, leading to an even larger scale war. So even if China wants to jump in to help, this may not yet be the right time when Russia still has the ability to cope on its own. It's not just the EU and NATO. US allies in Asia-Pacific like Japan, South Korea, Australia and New Zealand also support Ukraine by sending aid. However, they don't really see the war as relevant to them. In the event China provides military support to Russia, the situation could reverse. They would become united and stand on the same front as NATO partly because they are loyal followers of the US, having received lots of economic and military aid over the years. Partly also because each of them has conflicts with China over territory, economics or politics. If Beijing helps Russia succeed in defeating Ukraine, their power and influence would grow exponentially because the West would then be weakened and they could swagger around freely in the region. The US allies in Asia-Pacific would not be able to sit still after that. However, that is just a hypothetical scenario. From an economic standpoint, the European Union, the United States and their allies are China's top trading partners. If Beijing stands on the same front as Russia, it means accepting the risk of potentially being sanctioned similarly to Russia, but the effects would be much more devastating due to the larger scale. Of course, sanctions would hurt both sides severely, but if taken to the extreme, the outcome would be the US and allies continuing business among themselves while China loses its highest spending partners. So when they have not evaluated whether the risks outweigh the benefits, they will not dare to get involved in the conflict. Disregarding the factors above, if you were a Chinese leader, would you hastily help Russia? Probably not. When Russia shows no signs of collapse, it is better to let them struggle with the difficulties of the war. Wait until they are so weak that they are willing to give China anything military technology or cheap energy, then help. That is the chance to turn Russia from a superpower into one dependent on and subservient to China. Although that kind of play is unsightly, standing in the position of top superpower, almost everyone does the same, all for the national interests of their own country. But either way, China should still provide a small amount of money and weapons aid to Russia to build long-term cooperative trust. Otherwise, in the case Moscow wins the war alone, they will only have limited relations with Beijing, not as close as proclaimed. What do you think? Is China secretly providing economic aid to Russia or not? I think yes, but because they fear confrontation with the US, they cannot openly admit it now.